I view it more as a inflation hedge saving device than I would an insurance policy. An insurance policy comes with, because the cost of holding gold is de minimis, whereas insurance is leaky, right? I mean, you pay it and you hope you never have to claim it. And so we view gold as a savings vehicle in the real assets category, consistent with land and collectibles and fine art, as a way of sort of raising the floor of your net worth independent of the government's ability to inflate it away. And so if we did go into a period of hyperinflation, for example, our net worth would be the sum of the things we own that are real, that are useful, that are tangible, that we could port to the other side of that hyperinflationary environment. And gold is very easy to port, assuming it's legal to do so, to that other side of the hyperinflationary environment.
Doomberg, a financial journalist, recently appeared on Liberty and Finance, where he discussed his perspective on the future of the global financial system. In his interview, Doomberg warned that the U.S. government may confiscate gold in order to protect the dollar. Doomberg believes that the government is likely to confiscate gold in order to prevent a run on the dollar. If people lose faith in the dollar, they may start selling their dollars for gold, which can lead to a collapse of the dollar's value. By confiscating gold, the government can prevent this from happening and protect the value of the dollar. Now, Doomberg expects that gold confiscation is a very unpopular move. He believes that gold is used for money laundering, and the government's crackdown on software like cryptocurrency mixers is a sign of the dangers involved. During the interview, Doomberg explained that the government could exert control over gold by pressuring major refiners, which are critical points in the supply chain. He noted that these refiners operate within the fiat world and would comply with government directives, even if it meant changing their business practices. Now let's watch clips from Doomberg's interview with Liberty and Finance. But before we continue, make sure to watch the entire video and consider subscribing to our channel. Don't forget to turn on post notifications so you never miss any upload of ours.
We wrote a piece a couple of weeks ago, which I'm sure you're referencing, called Golden Handcuffs, where we made the point that many of the same tactics that are being used and misused, we believe, by federal regulators could very easily be turned and be used on holders of gold and particularly physical gold. And this would be especially pertinent if, say, the BRICS countries create a new currency and decide to settle their international trade imbalances using gold at the heart of a mix of commodities to do so, and that causes the price of gold to spike. It would be very easy for the government to use the same set of propaganda and sort of extra legal techniques that they've been squeezing the crypto industry with to turn around and do the same thing in the gold sector. And this stance of ours that we could be sort of broadly anti-crypto, but still sort of defending their legal rights, does confuse some people. We don't view them as intellectually juxtaposed against each other in any way, shape, or form. So I'll give you one tangible example. In the same way that they're basically using access to the banking system to choke off the fiat rails into and out of crypto, right? They're squeezing the banks. Signature Bank was basically seized, and Silvergate went out of business, and even Silicon Valley Bank had a pretty strong tie to the VC firms that were funding and underwriting a lot of these sort of crypto pump and dump schemes. The control knobs are very easily accessible. The correspondent banking system is well understood, and word has gone out to the management of these banks that if you don't want to end up like Signature, then you have to stop doing all business with crypto whatsoever, which is why you're seeing various, users unable to withdraw funds from, pick your favorite, global cryptocurrency exchange, because they're losing access to banking. If you think about gold, the major refiners where gold is basically converted to spec and, purity and punched into 100 kilogram or 400 kilogram bars, those are point sources of basically supply chain power that the government can say, like, this is going to stop now. And so they exist in the fiat world, and they will listen to their government overlords, even if it means, ending certain line of business. And as you said, and as we pointed out in the piece, like, gold is used for money laundering. Gold is indistinguishable. In fact, we wrote a piece about the dangers involved in the government cracking down on a piece of software. In this case, it was Tornado Cash, which is a Bitcoin mixer or a cryptocurrency mixer. If you get some stolen gold or some, gold that relies on child labor at the mine site, or pick your favorite reason why you might not want to own that particular atom of gold. Once it gets mixed into these refiners, it's not like there's any way you could trace the atomic history of the gold that is now in the quote unquote authenticated system. And so all of the exact same arguments that have been levied against crypto apply to gold. And it will become particularly politically toxic if Putin and Xi and the rest of the BRICS countries get together and decide that they're going to abandon the US dollar and rely on gold in part to settle their trade imbalances, which thus would necessarily, in the eyes of many gold bulls, cause the price of gold to skyrocket. Well, in that circumstance, the propaganda is easy. Gold holders are puppets of Putin. Gold owners are unpatriotic, and gold owners are helping to facilitate money laundering and the sex trafficking, and pick your favorite, sin. And all of the arguments used against crypto can be used against gold, which is only one of the many reasons why, regardless of your views of crypto, you should be very sensitive when the government stretches the boundaries of the law to achieve political objectives.
Doomberg is not the only one who believes that the government could confiscate gold to protect the dollar. Ron Paul, Peter Schiff, and Doug Casey have all warned of the possibility of gold confiscation. They believe that the government is running out of options to deal with the national debt, and that gold confiscation is a logical next step. They also argue that the government is not above using force to confiscate gold from its citizens. During the interview, Doomberg also highlighted the significant industrial uses of silver and stated that it is not perceived as much of a threat to the US dollar when compared to gold. He highlighted the growth potential for silver due to its industrial applications, particularly in the solar industry. Doomberg believes silver is poised for a major breakout. Doomberg also expects the silver market is ripe for manipulation, and that this could lead to a sudden and dramatic price increase. Let's get back to the interview.
I, for one, have said on other podcasts, and I'll repeat here, that if gold becomes outlawed and they confiscate it in return for, quote, fair market value, I will be turning in my gold. I exist in the fiat system. I'm a law-abiding citizen of the country. I have children that are getting into be college age. I have friends and family. And by the way, the percentage of people in the country who actually own a meaningful amount of physical gold outside of jewelry is quite low. And it would be very easy to isolate such people and to go after them. And so, sure, it would be difficult for the government to prove that I still own all of the gold eagles I've bought and that, APMEX has on file for me having purchased, and I have no record of having sold them, because if I did and I made a profit, I would have to declare taxes on that. It's probably traceable, but the point is, if something is overtly illegal, the vast majority of people will abide by the law. And yes, of course, you can hide your gold and transport its value decades into the future, but at that point, how are you going to reintroduce it? You have to effectively launder it back into the system or admit that you committed a crime for all these decades. And so people like to talk tough, on Twitter especially, or make fun of our position that we would turn in our gold. When push comes to shove, very few people will overtly break the law, especially if the government clamps down hard. And there's a very good possibility that they might. I own physical gold. It is a relatively meaningful part of the subset of my portfolio that I view as sort of savings, as real assets, land, and collectibles, and so on. But it's not a huge percent of my net worth, and it's certainly not worth going to jail for. And, in the extreme case, here's the thing that we're going to mention in the piece perhaps tomorrow, is like every year, the IRS asks you this little trap question as to whether or not you own any cryptocurrencies. You may be familiar with it on your Form 1040, check the box if you own, mined, or basically had anything to do with crypto. And we have, with a clean mind, check no every year. There are lots of people who own and participate in crypto who check no every year, and they're basically breaking the law. And if the IRS, if and when the IRS decides to do something about it, they have exposed themselves to legal jeopardy. Now, I don't know you that in private life, but I suspect you're a law-abiding citizen, and you don't overtly go about trying to break the law. Is gold the thing that you're going to make your final stand on with the government, and you're going to protect it with the bullets in your safe? I mean, I don't know. I think that's a very small number of people for whom this is the hill that they're willing to die on. Silver is not a monetary metal in the way that gold is. It is not being accumulated by central banks, as you correctly noted. But most importantly, it has substantial industrial use in ways that gold does not. And the free trade of silver is absolutely critical to, for example, the growth of the solar rollout. And one of the main industrial use for silver is, in fact, in solar panels. And this is set to grow in the future, and the government will be keenly interested in making sure there's enough new silver supply brought online to, meet that demand as solar grows and is mandated to grow, both in Europe and in the U.S. and the rest of the world. U.S. in particular, because of the fire hose of cash being thrown at the problem by the Inflation Reduction Act. And so, silver is not a threat to the U.S. dollar, and silver has substantial industrial uses that I think underpin a bullish case for silver in a way that doesn't exist for gold, so to be totally transparent. But silver, of course, is notoriously difficult to trade. It's up there with natural gas as far as sort of widowmaker trades that people dabble in and often lose money.
It is unlikely that the government will confiscate gold and silver to protect the dollar in the near future. However, if the dollar continues to lose value, the government may be forced to take such action. Gold and silver are seen as safe haven assets, and their value tends to increase during times of economic turmoil. If the dollar collapses, people will flock to gold and silver as a way to protect their wealth. This could lead to a shortage of gold and silver, which could force the government to confiscate these assets from citizens. What do you think of the interview with Doomberg? Do you agree with his assessment that the government is unlikely to confiscate gold and silver? Please leave your comments and observations in the comments section below. Also, be sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and enable notifications to stay up to date on our latest videos on silver, gold, and copper. Thanks for watching.